Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Ruchi Dubey Chaturvedi, Associate Professor working in Jai Hind College affiliated to University of Mumbai. Today I am going to teach you a module which says Personality Factors in Adult Learners. It will comprise of Introduction to Personality, what are the various definitions which define personality, that is the theoretical perspectives of personality, what are the changes which occur in personality of adult learners with as age catches up, that is the physical component, the cognitive component, how does the intelligence aspect of adult learners change, also the memory component, and of course how does creativity change. At the end we are going to see a very successful Rhodes Scholar movement program. Let's start the module on personality factors in adult learners. The basic objectives of this will be that after you have learnt it, you would understand what is meant by personality, various components and aspects of personality, and also how does personality change of adult learners, and in case we want to design very successful modules of adult learners, what are the various aspects of adult learners' personality which needs to be stressed. Now, when you talk about developmental psychologists, they have done intensive studies in understanding the personality of human beings. And if you just concentrate on adult learners, they have divided the phases of our development into three. They say that the early adulthood begins from approximately 20 years to 40 years. The middle adulthood begins from 40 and lasts up to 65 years. And anything above 65 years is considered to be a phase of life called late adulthood. Now, there have been lot of controversies and lot of discussions about how personality undergoes a change. General consensus goes by the fact that almost up to the young adulthood stage, that means in the 20s and the 30s, all kinds of mental capacities, our personality, our abilities and skills remain at its peak. And slowly, by the time middle adulthood begins in 40 years of age, certain decline begins. There are many other developmental psychologists who refute that. They said no, the body continues and also the mind, it continues throughout in phases of growth as well as decline. And many psychologists believe, including developmental psychologists believe, that even in the young adulthood stage, there are changes happening in the body and also phases of slight decline. Now, this declining phase will not be observed till a person starts approaching late adulthood. So, which means there is a term which is called as senescence. That means from young adulthood, gradual decline in the physical and mental capacity of human beings has already begun. First, we are going to focus on how we are going to define personality. Now, personality is a very, very big term. Very big term. Now, when you talk of people, their mental capacity, when you talk how they think, how they behave, how they act, it is all coming under a concept called personality. And many developmental psychologists believe that when we understand human development and personality, we should not worry about our biological age or what we call as a chronological age. What we should deal with is what they call as functional age. That means how is a particular adult dealing with on a day-to-day basis with his lifelong commitments, and they feel that chronological age is something which is not important. What is important is the functional age of adults, which will define what is their adjustment in life. So, that is very, very important, and we are going to see what are the factors which can enhance the functional age of adult learners. Now, coming down to personality and its definition, which I have just given you briefly, it is defined as a person's characteristic pattern of thinking, feeling and acting. It can be divided into various components, and various psychologists, depending on their theoretical background, has given us intense understanding about what it means. When you come down to a very, very world famous psychologist, Freud, we all know that he was a psychoanalyst and he gave us a very important psychodynamic concept. Now, this psychodynamic concept was a path-breaking concept in the field of psychology. He developed as many supporters as he had as many critics. So, when you look at his basic theories, the stress of Freud was that we today, what we are, what is our personality today, is completely based on our childhood experiences. And according to him, we have a very strong unconscious, and unconscious is full of sexual and aggressive instincts. Now, these sexual and aggressive instincts are under the control of what he called as id, or what we call as id impulses. Now, these id impulses are basic instincts which completely operate on instant pleasure principle. Now, every time these instincts, if they come out in the forefront, it can rattle the person tremendously. So, we also have, fortunately, another component of a personality which he called as ego. Now, ego is something which he said was operating on reality principle. Now, whatever other id impulses, when they become strong, it is the ego who is going to decide whether so and so instinct, whether so and so drive and motive should be shown or should it be suppressed. Along with it, by the time we reach an age of 4 to 5 years, we also have a development of superego, which is our conscience, which is our values, which is also our belief system. Now, ego forever, according to Freud, is having a big fight between the basic id impulses, which are just based on basic gratification, instant gratification, and the super ego, which is our conscience, and they say, don't do this, this is not the right thing to do in such a such time. So, Freud based his theory completely on these basic unconscious instincts. Now, among his followers, basically most of them followed his basic concepts, but as they started gaining more knowledge, more experience, and they started getting feedback from others, they realized that there was overemphasis on these basic unconscious instincts of sexual motives and aggressive motives. So, they realized that something more needs to be done. Among the first critics, and all these people basically call them as neo-Freudians because they emerged from the Freudian concept itself. Now, when you talk about two famous neo-Freudians, you have Adler and Horney. Now, Adler and Horney agreed with the basic propositions of Freud, but they said apart from what our personality being molded in childhood, whatever happens is happening because of these basic instincts. They said no. Apart from that, many social issues and what kind of interaction we have in life with other things around us also shapes our personality. So, while agreeing with Freud, they gave their own emphasis on social issues. Another new Freudian, Jung. Jung was a great supporter of Freud, but he said what is important in our personality is what he called as collective unconscious. He says we all have a universal reservoir which comprises of images, archetypes, our experiences, which for generations we have accumulated over the years. Now, according to him, this collective unconscious is the one which will shape our personality. So, we have neo-Freudians now who have built their theories on the basic concepts of psychodynamic, but they have given us a new understanding of how our personality gets shaped. Now, following the psychoanalytic perspective, there came the humanistic aspects also. Now, they said that what is most important for us is the self. How does the self emerge? Now, what is self? When you ask a question to a person or to yourself, who am I? Who are you? How do you define that? Is what is your self? The most prominent humanistic psychologist was Maslow. He stressed the concept of self-fulfillment, self-determination and self-realization and actualization. And he says if this is achieved by a human being, his personality is going to be healthy and the person is going to have a very robust personality and he is going to be happy too. Another humanistic was Carl Rogers. And he believed that people are basically good, they want to grow and they want to really attain self-fulfillment in their life. Now he says that whenever a person is unable to do that, now this is happening because the environment is offering many obstacles in his path. Now these obstacles are the one which stop his personality development and his achievement of fulfillment, satisfaction and happiness in life. So this was the concept which was given by Carl Rogers, another very famous humanist. Now he says there are three very important things which should be there in our lives. First, genuineness. That means we should be genuine, open, and we should carry out self-disclosure. That means we should basically be transparent. The other thing which he said was acceptance, that accept people around you and have a unconditional positive regards towards them. And the third concept which he gave was empathy, that is the degree to which you can understand others, you can relate to their problems, their life sorrows and joys. And these are the type of interactions which are imperative in our personality development. Now another front how personality is discussed. Costa and Macrae gave a very famous theory of personality which we known as a big factor 5 theory. Now this big 5 factor theory says that our personality is made up of 5 important traits. First is conscientiousness, second is agreeableness, third is neuroticism, fourth is openness, and the last is extroversion. So according to Costa and Macrae, our personality is made of these 5 important traits. And all these traits are socially significant for us, and how we show these traits will determine how healthy we are, how are we going to sustain in our life, how we are going to be in interpersonal relationships, and how is going to be ultimate adjustment of our life. Now among these traits, they observe that neuroticism, extroversion and openness tend to decline with age as we set in adulthood. While there are 2 traits of our personality which tend to increase as we age, that is agreeableness and conscientiousness. This was the third force in understanding personality. So we have seen the psychoanalytic, we have seen the humanistic, we have seen the trait theory. Now we are coming to another way of understanding personality, which is social cognitive perspective. A very famous name under this is that of Bandura. Now Bandura was the person who said that we are constantly in interaction with our environment. That is, there is a constant situation, person, environment and interaction which is happening, and which he calls as reciprocal determinism. Now this reciprocal determinism according to him happens in 3 ways. First is different people choose different environments, and our personalities then shape how we interpret and react to events. And third, we create situations which make us react in a particular manner. Now these theorists emphasize that people should exert personal control, and they really stress all of us developing internal locus of control, which they believe that when you self-monitor, when you control your behavior, that is, you have got tremendous of self-control. What is important is that whether you meet with success or you meet with failure in life, you cannot always have success, you will not always have losses. Whatever comes your way, you are always attributing yourself as, an accountability is also there, where you say everything which is happening around you is because of you. Now according to them, gaining this kind of internal locus of control and self-control requires a lot of attention, lot of energy and lot of self-discipline. There was another very famous psychologist called Seligman. He demonstrated it beautifully through his experiments, and he gave us a term which is known as learned helplessness. Later, many psychologists replicated his experiment, and they observed that whenever individuals are able to exert self-control about what's happening in their life, they experience freedom, they experience empowerment, they are successful and they are very, very happy. Now, Allport is also a person way back in 1943, that long back. He gave us understanding of self, and he said self is the core part of our personality, and somehow it tends to be lost somewhere in others' perspective and observation of what is our self. And based on Allport's new concept which he gave, people started understanding what is self-esteem, what is self-disclosure, what are self-schemas, what is self-monitoring, etc. So then they understood that self is a very, very important part of one's personality, which comprises of our thoughts, our feelings, actions, everything which we call as our personality. Now later on, recently, there are many neuroscientists who have seen that whenever this self, whatever we are talking about, there is a part in central frontal lobe in our brain. It gets activated whenever they are asking the participants to talk about their own self. What are their traits, what are their dispositions, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, which means that even neurobiologists support the fact that self as a part of our personality is something very, very important. Now, there are many people who have given us some negative aspects also. What happens to people as they start moving into adulthood? They said what trend which has been noticed in adults, especially the moment they are reaching the middle adulthood from 40 years onwards, they start having a bias which is known as self-serving bias. That means they start taking undue credit for everything good which happens in their lives. Whatever is favorable, they consider themselves to be responsible for it. And there is another thing which is known as overestimation of self. This is also a problem which adults start experiencing. What happens is, the moment they see something good happening, it is them which is responsible. The moment they see that there is something which is bad, they will not take the responsibility. And often it has been noticed that adults start overestimating their self, whether their abilities, whether their skills or their traits. So this is as far it goes as we have understood the theoretical perspectives of what is personality. Now let us go to the second part of this module, which is telling you how our personality changes with age. That means the changes, our body, we all know that when you say what is personality, it's a dynamic concept. It's not static now. We know that our personality keeps changing day to day, month to month, year after year. Some changes are very evident when it happens, and some changes which happen as we start aging, moving from young adulthood to middle adulthood to late adulthood. It might not be so evident when you are in your 20s and 30s, but some changes within our body and mind has already started happening, and they become evident when people reach in their 40s, in their 50s, and when they cross their 65 year of age. When it comes to physical component, it has been shown that the brain is constantly carrying out what they call as pruning and myelination of the brain neurons. The brain's function are more located in one of the hemispheres, the left hemisphere or the right hemisphere of the youth. That means if a particular function the youth performs, the functions are very localized in either the left hemisphere or the right hemisphere part of theirs. But the same function, if people are performing when they are in their middle adulthood or late adulthood, it tends to be bilateral. That means we are using both parts of our brain the moment we start reaching the middle adulthood. So there's a concept known as senescence which has been given. This is all happening because gradually there is a physical decline which is happening in our brain, which we cannot obviously do anything. These are gradual maturation changes which happen. Now there are various sequential studies which have been done to give us understanding what exactly is happening in our mind and body as we move into adulthood, starting from 20 years and going up to above 65 years of age. And these studies have given us ample understanding of what happens. And they said functions like learning, memory, our mental flexibility becomes less efficient with age. And this change of learning, memory, processing will be evident only when we reach our 40s. Now, if you look at our basic 5 senses, the visual senses, our vision, by the time we are 40s, we are invariably using spectacles. And this is happening because our senses also slowly start declining. There are another psychologists who have said that when you talk about inclusive reasoning, spatial orientation, perceptual speed, how fast do we process our data. They said it is at its peak the moment we are 25, up to 25. Our numeric ability and verbal ability almost stays okay till 40s, and gradually some changes start happening. They said now these changes which are happening, when you talk of slight slowing down in our memory, our learning, our attention span, our processing, they said this is not happening uniformly to everyone. There are people who can stop it and delay this kind of a decline. Now, who are these people? These are the people they have found who exercise, have a proper diet, they maintain a very disciplined lifestyle, and they are very resilient. That means whatever may be the stresses which come in their life, they are able to take them in their stride. They are very good in carrying out primary appraisal and secondary appraisal. Primary appraisal is basic, what is there in front of you, you are analyzing that situation. Secondary appraisal is going little beyond it. That is, how can you cope with situations? What is your life adjustments? How are you able to muster the various resources around you and cope? Now, these are what is called as secondary appraisal. People who follow a very disciplined lifestyle, they are very superior in primary and secondary appraisal, even when they are in middle adulthood and even in late adulthood stages of development. Now, there are various environmental and cultural factors which will also play a role for us in molding us as to how is going to be our personality as we proceed from one stage of our life to the other. And they have shown that definitely intellectual ability does slow down, but in different people it's a different stage, different process, different speed. But people who do not suffer from any diseases, they belong to high socio-economic background, they are involved constantly in very intellectually stimulating tasks. They have very flexible personality style. This is very important. They are married to spouses who are brilliant. These are the type of people who maintain very good information processing skills, and whatever deterioration happens in their life, they delay it. Hence, they are also high achievers. Another beautiful concept has been observed by a psychologist in China. They say China is a country where the old people are really wanted by the younger people. Whatever has been their experience, their wisdom is really looked up upon by these young youth, and they constantly seek their blessings, their knowledge, their experience. They say with this kind of temperament which youth have towards the adults are very comfortable there with age catching up, and they look at age related decline in a very positive manner, because never are they feeling that they are not wanted, they are neglected. So, this is in a nutshell, I have tried to tell you what are the physical changes which occur. Now, let's go to the cognitive part of our personality. That is some bit of changes which happen in the mental processes. Again, we have ample research which gives us very concrete things. Definitely, we know information processing speed tends to go down as people progress and they reach their 40s. They lose the ability to inhibit and stop irrelevant thoughts. The speed of processing data slows down. Hence, what happens is their reaction time increases. If they require instant reaction, it's going to be delayed in these people. The ability to pay attention, which we call a span of attention, also starts declining. Apart from that, how efficiently are they able to organize the data, do particular task also is slowing down. So, gradually the efficiency of using our mental processes is going down. This is affecting even our recall. There are many studies which have offered similar findings, and they say people who are constantly indulging in mental and intellectual exercises, they are the ones where they can trap these kind of decline, and they develop what is called as cognitive reservoir. That means it is a mental storehouse for them. They are able to draw up from these to fight with the age related changes which are going to happen in their life. Now, generally if you see, as age catches up, people move from 40s to 60s to 70s, there is no denying that in terms of challenges in their lives, it is on the lesser side. In terms of motivation, what they want to do in their life, it is also on a decline. But important thing is, can we fight the changes which are happening to us mentally and physically? The answer says yes. And it has been shown that adults who are not able to manage this kind of a decline, which is irreversible, it is going to happen. Now, these are the type of people who start developing prejudices. They become oversensitive. They also become overcritical. And the judgments which they make might not be very accurate. And it has been shown that they become more emotional. Their emotions go on a higher side. Now, this is all happening because at some point they feel that their self-control is on a decline, and in some ways, whatever is happening in their life, somehow they are not able to cope with that. Now, the changes which we experience as we move from 20-year onwards can be called as what is called as pro-formal thoughts. Now, pro-formal thoughts are the thoughts where adults start realizing that everything in life is not crystal clear. That means things cannot be everything black and white. There are grays also. If there is something right and there is something wrong, there is a possibility that something every time cannot be right. Something every time cannot be wrong. That means they are seeing the finer lines between right and wrong, and they realize that there are midway paths also. And it is also called as a dialectical way of thinking, where they accept these issues. They said everything around them cannot be clear cut. There would be ambiguities, there would be uncertainties all around, and for every issue around them, there could be various perspectives. If one person is saying one particular aspect of a same issue, there are other people who have got entirely different viewpoints. So, adults are able to take in very, very well. Another psychologist has talked about how our life undergoes change from early adulthood to late adulthood. They say when we are very young, in our 20s, we are in an achieving stage where we are extremely busy with our career, with our relationships, and this is a stage where major changes are happening and we are focused trying to cope with these changes and these challenges. Slowly we will slide into the next stage, which is called as a responsible stage, where we are focused on ourselves, our family, and we become very nurturant, we become very protective, and we are completely focused on our personal issues. As the person goes further into a later stage of adulthood, he reaches a executive stage. In the executive stage, social issues, what's happening around them, other institutions, other organizations, issues of other countries, other continents become very, very important. So the person is defocusing from his family and his personal affair, and wider perspective and wider things become of interest to him. And the last, they say, he reaches a stage which is called as a reintegrative stage. Now, this reintegrative stage is the stage where the person reintegrates. It basically means every issue now which becomes important to people in late adulthood, after 65 years, in their 70s and in their 80s, what is of interest to them now is what's relevant to their lives. Anything which is not relevant to their lives, they generally tend to lose interest in it. So now we have understood the physical changes, we have also understood the cognitive or mental changes. Let's quickly understand how intelligence undergoes a change with age in a human body. Now, Sternberg was the person who gave a triarchic theory of intelligence. It became very, very famous, and he says our intelligence comprises of three components. One is the componential component, which is dealing with how well you can analyze data, how you are in your problem solving skills, are you rational, what have you been learning. So this part of our personality and intelligence is very important when people are in young adulthood stage. Then the second type of intelligence, which is called as experiential intelligence. Now, this is dealing with people's prior experiences, how they are able to cope with a new situation, and this, according to Sternberg, is the insightful part of intelligence. Okay, then comes the third component of intelligence. Third component of intelligence is what he calls as the contextual. This is the success which people have when they are managing their day-to-day activities. And according to Sternberg, the second and the third part of our intelligence, the experiential and the contextual, becomes very strong and very important as people start aging. Sternberg has also given us the concept called practical intelligence. That means what is our ability to handle new situations, new challenges, and he says there are people who observe others, model their behavior accordingly, and these people have got very good thing called social radars. Now, when it comes to Meyer, he has given you the concept of emotional intelligence, and he says as adults move from one stage of development to the other, their emotional intelligence becomes very, very high, which is very good because the concept of sensitivity and empathy is linked with it. So this is where our intelligence component is concerned, which if you see, some aspects of our intelligence part of our personality is on an increase while some is on a decline. In a similar manner, some people have given a concept of fluid intelligence. It is basically dealing with our information processing capabilities, how is our reasoning ability, what is our memory, and they said fluid intelligence is the one which definitely declines with age. The second part of intelligence is the crystallized intelligence. It is the intelligence dealing with information, skills, strategies, expertise of people, and as people age, their skills, abilities, expertise are on a rise, which is a part of our intelligence affecting our personality because people become very competent when it comes to developing and using their crystallized intelligence. So fluid intelligence might be going down, but definitely crystallized intelligence is going up. So there appears to be some kind of a balance which is happening. There are various other reasons why this is happening. One is the intellectual competent adults. Now, if you see, there are some people who are totally different from others. Why this is happening is because these very, very intellectually competent people, they are not the norm. That means they are exceptional people who have done something brilliant in their life, where when it comes to intellectually stimulating tasks, they have done tremendous of work. Now, because of which they are above the rest in their own age bracket. Hence, they have been more successful, high achieving at each stage of their life. So, there are many things which can be done to reach this kind of a state. Important thing is to be completely involved in intellectually stimulating tasks. Baltes and Baltes have given us a concept which is known as selective optimization, where he says that as people age, they start concentrating on the skill, the talent, the ability, the knowledge, the expertise which they have in a particular area. So even if there is a decline in a particular part, there is no problem because some part of a well-practiced skill, ability, talent is the one which they bank on, and they are able to lead the life very, very successfully without observing any kind of decline or any kind of a disadvantage. Which basically means is they are able to compensate for age-related losses and age-related decline which they are facing. So which is brilliant, which is something really, really good, because even if a person is unable to cope with a particular thing, it doesn't matter, and it has been observed what are the things which they are not able to cope up as people progress from one part to the other. Basically the age bracket, they say if things are presented too fast to people as they are aging, if there are very complex rules which are involved in a particular task, generally the adults are not able to cope up by the time they are reaching middle to late adulthood. If they say somehow they're trying to get distracted in the emotional content of a particular thing or a particular situation. So this is also something which they say you can handle it beautifully by reorienting yourself, looking at the situation in a better perspective. Now we come to the next component, which is the memory component. Extensive studies have been done to understand what are the changes which happen in memory as we move from 20 years and we go to 65 years beyond. It has been observed that when it comes to our two important early preliminary memory stores, sensory memory and short-term memory, there is absolutely no decline. What starts affecting with age the first, in of course an adverse manner, is long-term memory. Now long-term memory is something which is basically dealing with our lifelong memories, how we process data, how we go about in our day-to-day life, and they believe that this aspect tends to slide a bit for us. Now now as the LTM becomes less efficient, it basically means is if we want to retrieve a particular memory at a particular time, we are not able to do that because somewhere certain things are showing a decline. They said doesn't matter. We use various schemas. Again, we use our expertise, knowledge, experience to come out of these situations. So it is not any major deterioration at all. And people who are flexible and adaptable, they are the ones who later will be able to handle various situations in a very, very competent manner. And only by the time people are reaching 70s, the other memory stores, which is the short-term memory, is going to become little weak. But that's okay, because most of the life has already been led by people successfully and happily in up to the age of 70s. So they have again various processes, again storehouses of information, knowledge, expertise, skills, which they are going to use, and they are going to proceed ahead with that. So even if there are certain components of our memory, certain aspects of our memory which are declining, we needn't worry, because some other part of our intelligence, our intellect, our cognitive process, our memory process will help us out to cope up with various challenges, responsibilities and changes which come in our life. Other researchers have given a concept, and they said episodic memory, which is dealing with our various day-to-day experience, it tends to decline. Many people have said, have given this kind of a understanding. They say it declines, and why does it incline? Because the frontal lobes part of our brain starts showing little bit of deterioration. Estrogen level changes in our body, and the hippocampus part of our brain, which is dealing with memory, also shows slight decline. But semantic memory, which is dealing with our memory of general knowledge, of facts, our experiences, implicit knowledge, which is there inside us somewhere, it is brilliant. There is absolutely no change in it. Apart from all that, you also have what is known as autobiographical memory. Now, autobiographical memory for adults is exactly similar to what is there in young people. They say it follows a Pollyanna principle. Pollyanna principle says all of us tend to remember happy, pleasant events much more than unpleasant events. So that pattern doesn't change whether it is an adolescent or a person in late adulthood. Now, what has to be remembered is the fact, another important concept is whatever the way the adults are today, they tend to recall past memories which match their current status today. So in the past, if something has happened which is totally different of their status now, they tend to reject it. So this is where memory is concerned. Now we come to the last component, which is known as creativity. Unfortunately, creativity, as people gain in knowledge, experience, skill and expertise, creativity is a part of your personality which tends to decline. As the people become more knowledgeable, so to say, the creativity gets hampered. So in late adulthood, starting from middle adulthood, I would say till late adulthood, people have to show flexibility and adaptability, which is going to aid creativity, because creativity is a big hit in people as they start increasing in age. They don't want to accept anything new. They don't want to accept any changes. So this is as regard the various components, how it changes with age and how it is all affecting our personality. Now, when you come to a very, very successful program, it is of adult learning, it is known as the Rhodes Scholar movement. Now, this Rhodes Scholar movement is very, very famous and successful in the western part of the world, where very successful adult learning modules and programs have been made, and it has shown tremendous of success when it comes to adult learning. Adults have really benefited in coping with the age-related deterioration which their mind and body were facing, and they have jumped back to normal behaviors, normal way of functioning, which is very, very fantastic. Now, this has been a very, very successful. Apart from that, there is another program which Penn University has used, which is also dealing with adult learners. And there are certain aspects which they have stressed of adult learners. They say that when you design any education program for adults, there are few things which have to be kept in mind. First, you have to give adults more control over their learning. That means basically they want more control, self-control over what's happening to them. Apart from that, they say as self is important, of course this is very important, very, very important in fact for adults. The second aspect which they say is that if you compare the adult to that of a junior, a youth, they said adults have got wide amount of experience. They want to use their experience, knowledge and expertise in the learning situation. That means create modules where their past experience will aid their current learning. Adult learners relative to a youth, this is surprising, have been found to be very focused, more focused than youth, and highly motivated to meet their targets. Only problem is, as adult learners are playing multiple roles. They are in a job, they are someone's grandmother, someone's grandfather, they are parents. They might not be able to find that much of time, effort and energy for learning, but they have to refocus their energies so that learning part, whatever they are learning, also becomes a very, very important part in their learning process. If this is all done in a proper manner, there is no reason why adult learners cannot match their learning ability and their personality aspects with that of the youth. They can go hand in hand. Unfortunately, with whatever little decline is happening to the mind and body of adults, more noticeable when they are in their 40s, they generally feel incompetent and they feel that they cannot cope up with the learning the way the youth can. Now, this has been completely negated by the findings. They said, no, focus your attention, get involved in intellectually stimulating tasks, maintain a very active social life which keeps your mind and body busy and competent. Face new challenges, and all age related changes, decline which are happening, you can stop them then and there itself. So this gets us to the end of the module. Hopefully you have understood what are the various changes which happen in the personality of adult learners. Thank you so much.